to knowledge, and that is talabul ilmi farida ala kulli Muslim. Seeking knowledge is compulsory for every Muslim. It's a general principle, and we know that that knowledge begins with the most important knowledge, knowledge of the religion. But the knowledge of the religion is vast. So where do we start? And when I say it begins with knowledge of the religion, I'm not, negating knowledge of the needs of this world. There are things that we need to know to be able to function in this world. And that's part of the obligatory knowledge on every Muslim, that he or she must learn what is necessary for them to be able to effectively function in a society, be able to contribute in that society towards its development and its growth, etc. But there is an individual obligation, a primary obligation, which begins with that individual and his or her relationship with God. So that's the religious knowledge. So we said, where do we start with religious knowledge? Well, of course, we know that the foundation of our knowledge is that of Tawheed. This is the essence of Islam. This is where it all starts from. So, if that is the foundation, Tawheed, even this science, this field of knowledge, is a vast field of knowledge, Tawheed in itself, is still quite vast. Where do we start with regards to it? Well, there's a general principle that scholars have identified, that the status of an area of knowledge is determined by its contents. The status of an area of knowledge is determined by its contents. So, if the contents are about Allah, Tawheed, this makes that area of knowledge, since Allah is the most important thing in our lives, the most important matter that we should be concerned about, then we can say that this area of knowledge is the most important. And within that area of Tawheed, knowledge of Allah Himself, as opposed to knowledge of worship and how worship should take place, knowledge of Allah Himself has to precede. This has to be our starting point. So we can say without any hesitation that what is known as knowledge of Allah's names and attributes, this is the most important area of knowledge. If we are to know Allah and worship Him, then this is where we have to start. And if we can remember, when Allah informed the angels that He was going to create a vicegerent in the earth, a Khalifa, and they questioned the consequence of the creation of man on earth, having observed the consequence of the creation of the jinn, they saw corruption, they saw the spilling of blood, they saw harm coming out of it. So they asked Allah, when you have us worshipping you, why create this other being who is likely to create corruption? So Allah informed them that He knew what they didn't know, and then He taught Adam the names of everything. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. And of course, the names which Allah began to teach Adam was, of course, beginning naturally with the names of Allah. Because what are the most important names of anything? Of anything in existence? The most important names must be naturally the names of Allah themselves. And what we find is that when we look at the verses of the Quran, which verse is considered to be the greatest verse of the Quran? That is the verse known as Ayatul Kursi, Why? Why is Ayatul Kursi considered to be the greatest? Because it focuses on the names of Allah. There is a particular narration which confirms that, which was narrated by the companion Ubay ibn Ka'b, and he had said that the Messenger of Allah had asked him, "O Abul Munzir," and that was his nickname, "do you know which verse of Allah's book is greatest relative to you?" Because obviously relative to Allah, they're all the same. I replied, said Ubay ibn Ka'b, "Allah and His Messenger know best." He asked me again, "O Abul Munzir, do you know which verse of Allah's book is greatest relative to you?" So, at this point, he responded saying, "Allah, there is no God but He, the ever-living, the self-subsisting." And the Prophet ﷺ then patted his chest and said, "May knowledge always be pleasant for you, O Abul Munzir." This is Ayatul Kursi. Also, in the Quran, we have the surah known as Surah Al-Tawheed, or Surah Al-Ikhlas, that this surah has been identified as being equivalent to 1/3 of the Quran in a number of narrations from the Prophet ﷺ. And why is that? If we look at Surah Al-Ikhlas, what we're talking about here is Allah's names and His attributes, clarifying who is Allah. So we can see from that the focus of the Quran itself with regards to its greatest verses, the greatest chapters, is a focus on the names and attributes of Allah. Because when we talk about Allah's names, each name has behind it an attribute. So this is why we have to consider the meaning of Allah's names also from that perspective. Having understood that, as we said, that our program will focus on the names of Allah and how they may be understood with regards to Allah, and how we may practice them in our lives. We have a particular hadith in which Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had identified a number of names of Allah. This is the hadith commonly referred to as the 99 names of Allah, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna lillahi tis'atan wa tis'een asman, man ahsaha dakhal al-jannah." Indeed, Allah has 99 names. Whoever counts them will enter paradise. And usually all of the various compilations, etc. of Allah's names are done on the basis of this hadith. There are narrations of this hadith wherein the names are actually listed. However, I should point out here that those narrations are in fact not authentic. There is no authentic narration in which all 99 names or 99 names are identified. We just have the general statement of the Prophet ﷺ in which he tells us that whoever counts these names or guards them or memorizes them, different narrations have different implications, then they will go to paradise. Now, when we say 99 names, we should understand that the 99 is not a limitation. It doesn't mean that Allah has only 99 names. Just as if I said, my brother